Well, again, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the author's table this morning, and let's get started. Now, Tammy, now how did you become an author, and what was your motivation?
Well, I became an author just because I was a teacher and I've always wanted to write books. It's just been something I've wanted to do. And I have a very unique, well, not unique actually to this point now, but I am the adult child of an alcoholic. So I wanted to write books that would help children.
Okay, very good. Yes, because you've been there, done that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, what was your turning point in your life where you said, enough's enough?
Well, the turning point where I realized I had to start the healing journey that would get me to the point where I could actually write a book
Yes.
was when I was 25 years old, pregnant with my first son, and I realized I had no idea what unconditional love was. And I realized, oh my gosh, I have a lot of work to do. And it
Yeah.
just started snowballing into everything that I had gone through, everything I had been through. And I had always wanted to be a teacher. So as soon as I started teaching, it just started getting into, I just started realizing how many of the children were going through exactly what I went through.
Did you find out there was more people than you thought?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because when you grow up in that situation, you think you're alone. You think you're
Mm-hmm.
the only one. You don't say anything, do anything. And it wasn't until I really started reaching out for and researching. And of course, back then the internet wasn't a thing.
Right.
So
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
you didn't have the resources back then. And now that I just finished writing my first book, and they're saying that it's 1 in 4 children lives with some sort of addiction in the home, and that's crazy.
Do you know the statistics of like how many people are actually going through this?
They say that it's 1 in 4 they're
Okay.
estimating.
Yeah.
And that was an estimate that was from before COVID. But if you look at like the National Association of Children of Addicts, they're saying about 18.25 million children.
Oh my gosh. It's
And
it's
that's
it's almost like the homeless too. They're children.
exactly.
It's so it's mind blowing because I when I heard about that too, and it's like I didn't understand. I can't comprehend why or how. It's sad.
It is. And honestly, you don't want to talk about COVID and keep blaming that on things or keep bringing it up. It's like kind of you say it's in the
Yeah.
past, but it's not because it brought out the best in some people and it brought out the worst in some people, and people were desperate. And it's so those statistics, I'm assuming, suicide is up with children, addiction
Hmm.
is up. It's all just kind of out of whack right now.
And I think you think a lot of it is because of the times now of everything going on in the world.
I think honestly, I know it sounds horrible. I think so much of it is the media. I think
Hmm.
like I said, I didn't know there was resources when I was a children because there wasn't the internet, there wasn't YouTube, and there wasn't all this stuff. But I also didn't see all the bad. I wasn't fed stuff. I wasn't,
Right.
encouraged to look at bad things. So I think that doesn't help.
That's correct. Absolutely. I mean, at least we have that resource now. Like before, growing up, there was no internet and all that, And but yeah. Um, Now, from your experiences growing up, now you created your first book called "Surviving Alcoholic Parents: ABC Guide to Thriving in a World of Chaos." Would you like to talk about that, Tammy?
That one is it is written for teens. My hope is to be able to get into the schools and talk to children. It is literally an ABC guide. So every letter stands for a different concept. So the A
Oh.
could be abuse or acceptance, and the B could be blackouts. And I was really trying to write it from a standpoint of children not having a lot of time, not having time to sit down and read a 300-page book. I wanted
Right.
it bullet pointed so they could go there, they could get references, they could flip through it and find things that resonate with them and maybe just read that section. Or so it's more of a resource and a guide, I guess you can
Mm-hmm.
say, with my story sprinkled in.
And it's made to where it's easy reading too.
Absolutely.
Yes. And also, your second book that came out, now that's helping children of alcoholics and other at-risk students, an educator's guide to identifying and empowering disconnected youth in the classroom. That sounds very interesting too. Can you talk about that, please?
So that one is written towards the educators on how to kind of, I have something I call the Thrive method, which each letter stands for a different, I guess, concept of what they can bring into the classroom to try to build children's self-esteem and empower them, getting them to learn self-care and self-love and all the things that children in
Oh yeah.
dysfunctional homes aren't being taught or shown, or they don't have the role models. So, and you don't want to have to, I wanted to find a way to do it where you didn't have to have the child come to you and say, oh, by the way, I live in a dysfunctional home. I mean,
Right. Right.
you
Yeah.
want to, I feel like when I taught, I felt like I wanted them all to be empowered and all to learn compassion and empathy and self-care. And so the people that needed it more were going to get more out of it. And the people that were getting it at home, it was just a reinforcement.
Now, with your experience though, also with teaching, and what is your biggest like challenge of? I mean, are the like the kids, are they really hungry to really, you know, to move on to get better, or is it some of them are very difficult to?
And I'm not in the schools now, but I'm just in talking to the teachers. That's one of the other things that sparked this idea, is that there's this preconceived notion kind of that a child, that they're lazy, that they don't want to learn. And I just, sometimes I just want to, I get so frustrated because I'm like,
Yeah,
children are wired to learn. Our brains are wired to learn.
that's
They
right.
used to think that we stopped learning at a certain age, and now they're finding that no, we never stop learning. So I look at me as an example. I was one of those children that used to sleep on the desk all the time.
Mm,
So I didn't get that special attention from teachers because they thought I was lazy and didn't want to learn. And, no one ever said, why do you sleep on the desk all day long? Because I would have said, because it's the only safe place for me to sleep.
hmm.
So the book is more about just looking at the class as a whole. I mean, I can't tell a teacher or tell all the teachers, hey, give every kid the benefit of the doubt, but I did,
Hmm.
and then find out, because yes, there are kids that are just lazy flat out. There are also children that are hurting. Some of
That's
these
right.
kids are just hurting, and the last thing they care about is math.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's tricky for a teacher right now to try to get them engaged because they are going through so much. But my theory was always, if you can't reach them, you can't teach them.
Mm, yeah. Do you find that a lot of them are falling in the cracks?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, teachers are overwhelmed, parents are overwhelmed. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and it's an overwhelmed system. Honestly, it's a hard system right now, and that's why I feel like if there's just more general awareness, I want to go to schools, I want to talk to people, I want to talk to the children, I want to, let the children know that they can reach out. Children, I used to tell my first graders when I would teach the very first day, hey, stuff happens. Life is hard. Like, there's some things are going to happen, but you always have to have those people in your world that you trust and that
That's
you
right.
love.
That's right.
So, and I would just tell them, they called me Mrs. V. I'm like, Mrs. V is one of those people. So anything you say to me, you feel free. You can, and I just tried to make people feel safe and make it a safe place. But it's tough right now.
Everybody has a story, and everybody, some of them are, are better off than others, but we all have a story, and you should always be open-minded because you
Absolutely.
just don't know. And I think the biggest thing too is when people stereotype others, you just don't understand their situation. But if you're open-minded, you can listen to them, hear them, and maybe you can save their life.
Absolutely.
Some of the simple things too that we can do to help someone. I mean, it can be a worldly change for somebody. You
A
know.
perfect example is when I taught first grade, I used to have what I called my magic mailbox. And it was a
Yeah.
mailbox that you could put questions in about it. You could put any question you wanted in the mailbox, but in reality, they weren't putting the questions in. I was.
Uh,
I was putting questions in that they know they needed to hear. And I had a little girl 14 years later come back and say, Miss V, if it wasn't for you and your magic mailbox, I don't think I'd be here. I don't think I would have made it.
that was their outlet to reach out.
Well, yeah, and what
Mhm.
happened is I was feeding the questions. I knew what was going on in her house, but she wasn't gonna tell me. I could
Mhm.
tell because I could see how she was acting. And so I fed questions as if somebody else in the class was asking them, and then I answered them. And she eventually came forward and told me what was going on. But and we worked together to try to make it better. I mean,
Now do
but
you Mhm. Now
go ahead.
do you see yourself, like, when you were growing up, you see that in someone else, like the same pattern that you went through in some children?
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
It's you can just see the lack of eye contact. You can just the cringing,
Mhm.
the lack of social skills, the aggression. The you say some kids, you'll say, "Wow, that's really nice," and their first initial reaction is, "No, it's not. It could be better." So
Mhm.
that's what they're hearing at home. They're not getting positive validation. They're having to learn to be perfectionists to please the parent. And they're just, and you can just see it. And I didn't see it when I was a child, but since I started into my journey of fixing I don't want to say fixing because I wasn't broken, just
Mhm.
healing, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, I noticed patterns, like, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." It all started to make sense, and then I remembered some of my childhood, but I immediately see it in the children.
You can see the fundamentals are the same, but the times are different, but that stays the same. If
Absolutely.
something is broken in the home, you'll know.
Mhm.
Yes. And also, Tammy, you're an author, you're a
Yes.
mentor, you're a guest speaker, and you're also a certified life coach. Would you like to talk about that?
That kinda started because when I was going through my healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a chronic learner. Being a teacher, that's just something that kind of came with me. So when I was in therapy and when I was going into coaches and talking to different people and resource groups and stuff and just support groups, I wanted to learn. So I became basically a chronic learner. And um it wasn't until later that I like was always up for a challenge too. Like people would say, you can't pass the life insurance test. It's really hard. So
Oh,
I would take a 2-week class and
prove
get
them wrong.
licensed to sell life insurance because it was
Yeah.
really hard, they said.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started doing so much of the coaching and working with coaches that it just came very natural to me. And I didn't go back to school to get my PhD or anything, but I was like, wow, I can help these people. I can coach people through what I've been through.
You have a gift.
Yeah, it's yes, and I had one lady say to me, I was in therapy for 18 years or 12 years, and in 18 minutes you told me more about the way I am and why I am the way I am than she did in 12 years. And I said, well, one, I was like, you need a new therapist, but that's beside the point. But two, I was like, she hasn't lived your life. She hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been there.
Right.
So it's kind of like I have a very dear friend who lost her husband. I could never be a life coach for someone who lost a spouse. I don't know. I can only do what the books tell me to say. And
Mm-hmm.
that's to me not helpful.
Well, you have that connection too, because when you were growing up, you went through that same. So it's much easier for you to reach out to someone that's been through what you went through,
Exactly.
and it comes easy for you. But it's still a gift because if they didn't have you, who knows what would happen to them? So you're like that I don't want to say a stepping stone, but you're that source that they need. And it's very critical. Um, and it could be adults too, correct? I mean, not just
Oh, yes. I
children.
do coaching. I'm actually getting ready to start in 2 months. I'll be having my first group coaching uh, for adult children.
Okay, that's
Yep.
awesome. Um, Now, Tammy, what is your message that you want each person to know that is going through difficult times? Like, what is your main approach to them? Like, what is your message?
Basically, the best message I could give is that what you're going through, I mean, people go through horrible, bad things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to control what you can control. You have to love yourself, that you really will not survive unless you can turn some of the care inward
Mm-hmm.
and learn to take care of yourself. That you didn't cause any of this, but that at the same time, you are in control of your destiny and your life experiences are not your life sentences.
That's right. That's correct. Yes. Um, Now, what is your like your biggest challenges that you sometimes you come up to a wall and say, man, I need to do a different approach, or is
You mean in life or business?
life?
Honestly, it's just continuing to move forward. I mean, there are traits that you develop as a result of abuse and neglect that carry with you into relationships,
Hmm.
into the workplace, into every aspect of your life. And it's just I have to just constantly reground myself and remind myself where I was, and
Yes,
that nobody is ever perfect, but moving forward is always the right place to be heading.
that's correct. From you growing up till now, I mean, you can look back and say, man, look where I'm at today. And
Absolutely.
I think that's huge just by itself. Now, when you're speaking, do you sort of talk about your life journey kind of thing so people can understand where you're coming from?
I do sprinkle my story in. I think everybody needs to know why I'm
Hmm.
trying to help the people that I'm helping. I've never gotten graphic with details. I feel
Right,
like you can kind of read between the lines.
right.
Um, because I don't want people to think that my story is a baseline for trauma or a baseline for neglect, because people, my version is my version, but everybody's horrible is their horrible. So even though someone might not have been physically or sexually abused, their neglect was still
That's correct.
damaging to them.
Absolutely. Now, have you come come across someone where you by yourself could not really assist them 100%, but you had to actually pull in other resources for them?
Um, a lot of the people that reach out to me, especially online, because it's more unofficial program type things where people just feel free to reach out to me. I'm kind of that mentor.
Yes,
If I think that I will definitely, a lot of what I do is steering them to proper resources.
yes,
A lot of these children do not know that they can, they're afraid to go to a school counselor. They're afraid to tell their parents. And I'm just, if someone's having, say, suicidal thoughts or is doing self harm, I'm like, you need to get a lot of this is anonymous, of course, remember, because
right.
they're reaching out on social media and stuff. But I'm like, I do everything I can to encourage them to get to somebody else.
Do you ever get to the point where you have to actually speak with the parents, or you don't go that?
I can't, because
Yeah.
they're reaching out to me online. I'm hoping, God willing, and things going well. I do have my company is called Teens Thriving Now.
Hmm.
I am working to turn it into a nonprofit so that I can have more connections. But right now, legally and just for um, uh, secrecy and
Hmm.
people's privacy,
Right.
I don't have a lot of information. Especially when I was teaching, children would come to me. It was very easy. If they were being neglected or abused, I would have to go to the principal.
Yes.
But it's different now. But if someone reaches out to me, and I don't know, they're an email address. That's why I'm in the process of turning that into a Teens Thriving Now into a nonprofit, so that I can have more resources backing me up. More, when I talk to children, if I talk to 3 children, I always have another adult on the Zoom meeting
Yes.
answering questions, just so that there's never just me. It's always a group.
See, we need more people like you, Tammy.
Yeah.
You think about what you're doing. That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just huge.
I mean, I'm on a mission. I mean, I'm like, okay, I'm 55. I'm not sure what else. I had another business. COVID kind of wiped it out. I was cool with that. God puts you on the earth for
That's
a
right.
reason. And
That's
I feel
correct.
like, okay, now is the time. 20 years ago, no way could I have shared this message with people, because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready. I didn't know what it took to get over the hump.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I couldn't, I was still living the terror. You can't coach someone if you are still in wrapped up in it.
that's right. God works in mysterious ways, and
Yes, you
this is wonderful though that you're doing this, because it's people like you though that 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 had that experience, and that it's not going to stop, you know, and so for you branching out and creating more resources for others to come to you, or the resources that you provide, I think that's awesome, and Now, I was going to ask you too now, Tammy, you have a website.
I do have a website. It's just my name. It's tammyvincent.com. And the irony of this whole thing is, as much as I'm trying to help and everything else, that Amazon canceled my book,
They canceled your book.
The Surviving Alcoholic Parents. No
Oh,
explanation, no anything. It's probably an artificial intelligence that grabbed the two words surviving an alcoholic and just didn't like it, canceled my KDP account, canceled everything. So now I'm like, okay, now I'm even more on a mission, because now that Amazon was a good way to get the word out.
absolutely.
And now I can't do either of my books. So now I'm like, okay, now my focus is on getting into the masses. Like, how do I reach the masses versus $1, $2 Amazon book at a time? Because that's not cutting it.
Right. Right.
No, I was upset. My ego, my pride was hurt for about 5 seconds.
Well, you figure too, the time that you put all this together, and just not just that, but it's your experience too, and all that valuable information, and then this. So yeah, that look at it as a just a little bump in the road, but you're gonna find it. You're gonna get out there. And now, can you reach out to Amazon somehow?
Oh,
And
I've talked to Amazon. I've talked to them several times, and then it was just one excuse after another. But you can't really talk to a person. But it's like I made peace with that, because I'm like, if it's kind of like the people that come to me, if they're judgmental and they're, whatever, they're just not my people.
right,
So at the end of the day, yes, Amazon is huge and they have a lot of outreach and they have this and they have that, but they're not my people if they don't like what I have. So
that's correct.
I'm okay with that. There's a lot of, there's other avenues. I can still print my books. I just can't sell them on Amazon.
There's a reason for everything, though. So now, are you going to be creating another book in the future?
I am actually in the middle of writing one for inner child work.
Oh, now, can you explain a little bit about that?
So inner child work, basically it goes all the way back to like young and all the way back, where basically what it's saying is, when you're born, your inner child is you're joyful, you're innocent, you're free spirited. It's really your soul is the
Mm-hmm.
person that you're born. And so the concept is when you get hurt or damaged, that little version of you kind of changes your perception of how you see the world. And so so let's just say, a good example is, you put a whale in a small cage, right? And a whale in a small cage is only going to swim in circles. And then you put them out into the real world, they still only swim in circles. So that's how powerful the mind is.
Mm,
So when you get damaged at such a young age, your version of the world is a 6, 7, 8-year-old version. It's not intelligent enough to see a bigger picture,
mm-hmm.
it's just emotion, it's immature, it's small. So you have to really break down the walls of that inner child and get that inner child to see a different version of the world, because you're acting out as that child,
Okay, sure.
if that makes
Mm,
sense. So
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's complex, and yet it's so simple at the same time. I mean, when a lot of psychiatrists and psychotherapists and healers and all this other stuff always say it's that younger you that's speaking. It's not you.
That's correct. Yes.
My mind is intelligent enough to know that just because a 6'2" man hurt me doesn't mean that every 6'2" man is bad,
Right.
but a 6-year-old is not.
That's correct.
So if you
Yes.
stay stuck in the 6 minute, if your mind,
Yes.
if you're, and your mind is very powerful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, do you have any like book signing events or any events coming up?
I don't right now. I wanted to start. I was going to do a book tour in the area in Florida, and I was
Yes.
going to try to hit like 60 shops in like 90 days or something, and organize some kind of book tour. And that just, been doing so many outside things that hasn't come up to fruition, but I definitely want to do more.
Okay.
I just did a couple local libraries. I just did one down in Delray Beach where there was like 30 different authors there.
Yeah, there's one that's in Melbourne in November. It's Authors for Authors event,
Okay.
and I'll send you that information. So maybe you can head to that one too. It's a pretty good size event.
Is it? And I know a lot of them do just, I contacted a bunch of them. I don't know if I did that one, but a lot of them do just fiction books.
Okay, yeah, this is everybody. This is
That's
everybody.
everybody?
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
that's in Melbourne.
yes. But I'll send you that information.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, I
well,
definitely, I love doing them. I love talking to people.
well,
And I
absolutely.
honestly end up giving out most of my books
Oh.
anyway because it's usually
But you know something, it's valuable information, and and you stand behind them, 1,000%. So, and but I like to say thank you so much, Tammy, for taking the time today and really spreading the word. Because what you're doing and really what you've been through, I mean, it's so critical, and it's very important that you continue doing what you're doing.
well, thank you.
Well, of course. And again, thank you so much for being on the author's table, and I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much.
And you have a great
I
day. Okay?
appreciate you having me.
Well, of course, absolutely, anytime. And
Okay.
you have a wonderful day. Okay.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you, Tammy. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.